Welcome everyone to our next Smile webinar, the December edition. Very happy to see everyone here on the panel, as well as our guests joining. So I'm Jerome Eger. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Smile API. Welcome everyone, and I would like to give you, for those that have not previously attended one of our seminars, give you a quick introduction about what Smile is, also a little bit of where we are positioned in the market. And yeah, ideally for that, we have also our first slide. We can, yes, okay, great. So, all right, so we have our panelists today. Before we actually start and dive in, I would like to make a few housekeeping remarks here. So the session is going to take a full hour, and there will be somebody answering your questions that you can address to our panelists in either the chat function, which is public, and we also have the private option in the Q&A. So please use the Q&A section if you are a client and if you would like to address client-specific questions during the seminar to us. There will be somebody in the Q&A and in the chat to answer your questions throughout the seminar. If we have more questions that we can answer, we also have the time afterwards, after the seminar, for which we have reserved the last 10 minutes. So without any further ado, I would just say we start the session. First of all, I would like to introduce to those of you who have not met him yet, Jean Pabellion, who is our CPO here at Smile API, as well as Vince Villamil, who is our head of sales and also responsible for customer success. Next slide, please. So as a quick introduction for those who don't know Smile as much yet, we're the one trusted source for employment data in Asia. Under this roof, we basically see all sorts of employment and income related information and data. To give a quick example, we also observe the change in work, especially during COVID, and therefore we also define our range of action very much also in e-commerce, in the gig economy, as well as in freelancing, but also traditional work. So Smile is essentially covering information from all of these sectors and builds a bridge from the for the employee to build a bridge between their employer on one side and any financial service or generally any app on the other side. So if you would like to share your employment information to get access to relevant services such as credit, insurance, bank accounts, generally access to financial services, oftentimes your employment information is required. I'm saying this from an end user's point of view. The seminar is targeted towards a business audience. The use case for that is what I'm going to bring to you together with Jean. Now, I want to give you a little bit on the next slide, a high-level introduction, because we often always have not just tech friends here that are in our audience, but also those that are from the business side. So first of all, what is the problem that Smile can help you to solve? And there's actually quite a few. So maybe we can go through them one by one. Generally, we have a lot of friction that we see when it comes to onboarding customers and employees. Now that's understood. There's a lot of data that needs to be fed in from your client towards your platform. This process is very, I would say, expensive. Yeah? So this takes time. You need third parties to provide you with this information, and there's also a lot of compliance and connection work that needs to be done. Then there is also always the risk of trustworthiness associated with this data, especially when we're looking at unsecured lending. So specifically there, the question is the data that we provide or the data that my customers provide to me, is that accurate and trustworthy? There's always a small fraction of customers where you think, there is a risk that there's probably some exposure there that is going to bring us some risk. And obviously there is a topic of friction, where you don't want to expose your customers to bad user experience. So these are the problems that we're facing now in the market. Now, the solution that Smile essentially offers is threefold, or to say manifold, but for the sake of bringing this into a format that everybody can digest, the data that Smile provides is aggregated. So Smile is providing access to a lot of the employment platforms. Think payroll, ERP, HRM, employment platforms in general, gig economy platforms. All of this data gets aggregated into a single API. And also this API that has that helps you to aggregate all of this information from a single source cannot just read this information, but also gradually Smile is working on solutions for many platforms where we can also write into these platforms, meaning altering information such as payment information or bank account, bank transfer information, direct deposit switch, and all of these applications become possible through the integration with Smile through a single portal. So this portal is essentially the door to Smile and can be used by your developers. There is a whole range of explanations, how the endpoints, how the API endpoints work, how you implement them best, and how you get started real quick and smooth with Smile. So next slide, please. How is Smile different? There again, we have basically 3 points that we'd like to share with you. So traditional verification, I already touched it a little bit. There are, compared to the traditional ways of verification, Smile works through direct integration into your application. So there's a white labeled front end where your end user will not be able to make a great difference between what is actually your app and what is Smile. So you can seamlessly integrate this and therefore streamline the process that helps you to automate it and have a great customer experience. The data integration tools, I already mentioned this, are very smooth. The start point for that is really the portal and the connection between your team and Smile. Remember, the name Smile stands for you smiling. So this is our goal. We want to make our clients happy, and we're also very attentive when it comes to this. Data service providers is also something that I just mentioned. Those that we already cover predominantly as of now in the gig economy and in the freelance economy have a huge benefit, or basically 2 huge benefits that I would like to expand in the next few slides. So basically, they're growing relatively quickly, and at the same time, there is also a big potential because most of these freelancers and gig economy workers are still unbanked or underbanked. So let's have a quick dive into this opportunity specifically, because today's seminar is very much focusing on the Philippine clients. Now, the Philippines is the #1 fastest growing market for the gig economy and freelance economy in 2020, where we saw over 200% growth in earnings, only followed by 160% growth in India. The numbers that you see on this little cake diagram on the right are 2019 figures. So what we're covering there is roughly around 2 million workers in 2019. And this is essentially, if we carefully extrapolate, can be already doubled. So the latest number shows that there is a huge growth in the freelancer as well as in the riders and in the e-commerce sector. So that means people, this is the number of people, of workers that are working in this economy and that are potentially customers, or if you're an aggregator, customers of your customers that might be very happy to get access to their data through Smile. All right, so if we jump to the next slide. So basically just a few facts that we would like to share with you. Smile already covers 90% of the fast growing gig economy in the Philippines. We're also quickly expanding in other markets of Southeast Asia, such as Indonesia, as well as Singapore. We're also looking into India. So these are very promising markets where we see great uptake at the moment. The gig economy is largely untapped. We see a lot of the workers that are on these platforms, whether it is in gig or in the freelance economy, or even sellers on Shopee, Lazada, or some of the big platforms in India are underbanked, and their income is invisible to financial institutions. So for the Philippines, we currently have roughly around conservatively 5% or 5 to 10% of the workforce that is covered. We will bring this up to nearly 100% in the next quarter or two in the Philippines. We do this through a new technology that you can see when you follow us on our product news, either on LinkedIn or on other social media channels. And yeah, so this is, stay tuned on that side. And what we basically see is that there is a growing number, not only of platforms, but also of players that are, or end users that are on these platforms as well. Now, we can jump to the next slide, I think, which, all right, okay. So we have a quick survey that we would like to ask everyone here, just to make sure that we know what your familiarity is generally with APIs. This call is basically for the onboarding and to help product-specific colleagues, clients, aggregators to become more familiar. So we are going to share the survey now with everyone. And I don't think we need 5 minutes, but maybe 1 or 2 minutes to bring the survey up. And after that, Jean will give you a little bit of an insight into how the API at Smile works. Okay, there he is.
All right.
And
all right.
Okay, so are we good with the results already, Jean?
Yep, they're all in. All in.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Fantastic. All right, then over to you. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, Jerome. So again, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon for our webinar, and thank you for answering our poll. So so I'm looking at the results right now. So we have like a very even distribution. So some of you have heard of it a little bit. Some of you have actually developed your own APIs, and some of you have worked with APIs. So just for the benefit of everyone, just so we have a shared understanding. So bear with me if you already know this, but let me just give you a very brief overview of what APIs are and how they work, and then more importantly, how Smile's API works. All right. So just as a quick overview. So APIs, basically, it's just a way of being able to connect different applications and different systems with each other. So if you use any sort of modern mobile app today, they typically use APIs. So the way it works is if you use an app, It could be a mobile app, could be a web app. It can be all sorts of digital products. It can also be your, a chatbot, or it could be your washing machine or smart device. So anything that is able to connect to the internet and make a request for data, probably uses APIs, right? So the way it works is if a device or an application needs some information, needs some data, it typically creates a request for information. Typically, it goes through the network, through the internet. That is then routed to a server, which kind of handles, tries to understand what the request is all about. Typically, it is then routed to some sort of data store to retrieve that information, and then it comes back again via the same channel, using widely accepted, widely known web protocols. And then so that response typically comes in a standard format, typically in something called XML, or extensible markup language, or JSON, or JavaScript object notation. So these are very widely accepted, standard formats a lot of developers are already familiar with. So what APIs bring to the table is the ability to be able to exchange data very easily wherever that system may be in the world. Okay, so how does the Smile API work then? So typically, if you're a developer, right, and you want to integrate with different systems, the challenge before was trying to integrate with each one, trying to understand the APIs of each one, and kind of maintaining those integrations. So that usually takes a lot of time and takes a lot of, takes a lot of effort, and obviously has it can be expensive over time. So for those companies that are really interested in employment and income information, what Smile does is it basically acts as like a sort of a gateway for different systems to be able to get employment and income information in a standardized way. So those systems can be gig platforms, as Jerome mentioned. So these are systems that allow people to take part-time work, or what we call gigs. This can be deliveries, or freelance jobs, or things of that nature. It can be commerce platforms, so people selling online, which has become very, very popular during the pandemic. So people joining popular marketplaces to sell goods or food online to augment their income. It can also be for those formally employed, it can be their data that is in the enterprise systems of companies. So these can be human resource systems, or HRIS, or it can be payroll systems where their payroll, their monthly pay is automatically computed and distributed. So Smile basically acts as a gateway, aggregating all of that data, so that if you're an entity, you're like a bank or a financial services company that's interested in this sort of information, you don't have to go through the effort of integrating with all these different platforms. You can just connect with Smile, again, like a similar concept to other gateways, like a payment gateway. You don't have to maintain point-to-point integrations with different payment platforms. In the same way, Smile, we kind of manage all those different integrations with different employment platforms, and we can share that information with you very, very easily. Now, the other thing that Smile does, besides aggregating data, is we also normalize that data. So again, one of the challenges with doing systems integration is managing the different formats and on how the data is presented and transmitted. So what we do is we not only aggregate the data, but we also normalize it. So we transform the data to follow a common format, usually in compliance with a widely accepted standard. Things like ISO standards and things of that nature. So, for example, if you look at the data that we provide, and you look at things like simple things like the date, we follow ISO standards, or it could be the phone numbers. It's formatted in a universally accepted way, in a standard way, something called the E164 standard. or things like currencies or country codes, again, following, 2-character or 3-character standards for country code or currencies. Now, all of this you can actually see yourself, and later I'll show it to you. You can go to our website, and you can click on the link there for developers, and it will take you to this link, which is our developer portal. So our developer documentation portal provides information on how to use our APIs, what the data looks like, what the data output looks like. And then since it's interactive, you can actually use it to kind of simulate or be able to query the data that's available in Smile's test environment or sandbox environment. Okay, so you can go to our website, or you can go direct to this link. It's being shown on screen, docs.getsmileapi.com. Okay, so to kind of illustrate in more detail how our API works, we thought it would be better to actually show it to you in action. And the way we will do that is we will go through a scenario where we'll go through an actual implementation scenario. So to set this up, we created this kind of simulated kind of scenario where we have a neobank. The neobank is called Filipinas Bank, and they have decided to use Smile's API for their KYC, or Know Your Customer, and onboarding process. So this is the process that you typically go through when you're applying for a bank account or you're applying for a loan. So basically, they in this scenario they try to make it as seamless as possible by using Smile's API to get some information, their employment and income information of their customers. Now, to set this up further, we'll pretend that we are a person that's trying to apply for a loan. So this person is George Palomero. He's a security guard. Fortunately, he was laid off during the pandemic, so it's been challenging for him to get employment. So he's resorted to using gig platforms. So being a Grab driver or being a delivery driver. So that's something that he's trying out. Now, all of this information, so you can follow, is actually available again in our developer documentation portal. There are test accounts there that you can use to kind of go through this and simulate it when you use our developer documentation. As long as you have something called our API credentials, which I'll talk more about later, you can actually run this yourself. But in this scenario, we've actually created the front end to illustrate it further. Okay, so let's go through it now. Okay, let's try this one. So again, so the nice thing about using an API is you can have different sorts of experiences. You can either provide it as a mobile app, or you can provide, in this particular example, a chatbot experience, right? So again, it uses the same set of APIs. It calls the same backend, and you can provide different scenarios for it. All right, so this is what you will see. In this example, again, I'm George. I'm trying to apply for a loan. What happens is it will call our Smiles API to retrieve the link widget. The link widget then shows the different employment platforms available. So again, George is a Grab driver, so he will ask him to provide his Grab login credentials. Now, in this example, we want to get this from the documentation. So we'll actually go here and go to the API documentation, just so I can show to you where to get the Sandbox credentials. Go to Getting User Data and go to Testing in Sandbox. And you should see here, the test account that you can use. So we'll use George Palomero's test account here. And then we'll enter his mobile phone. And then it also provides this, a sample verification code. So typically these platforms will send something called a one-time password or one-time PIN. So you can enter that and then enter, and then it should go through the linking process. And so what happens behind the scenes is once the user gives their consent and once the user links their account, what happens is Smile goes in, is able to retrieve that information, pertinent information like their name, their contact information, so on. And so what will happen is you can design in your work in your application the process of retrieving that information that was retrieved by Smile, and so it will look something like this, right? So in most cases, these sorts of platforms, they provide a rich information about the user. Typically, they go through a KYC process as well in these platforms, and so you can get things like their name, their things like whether their marital status or date of birth, country of residence, their contact information like email or phone, home address, and so on and so forth. So this sort of kind of rich information is available. Now, how does that work behind the scenes? So let's kind of let's see how it was built, right? So to kind of so for those of you who are a bit technical, so you can maybe follow along very easily. So so the way we can see how we can illustrate how this works is by actually looking at how the different API resources that are available with Smile, right? So in Smile, once you go through the documentation, you can actually see that there are different types of resources available to you. So the main resource maybe to start with is something called the user resource. So remember when George logged in and try to apply for a loan. So what you can do as a developer is you can actually connect your application registration process to the user creation process in Smile. So when they register, you can actually in the behind the scenes call an API endpoint for our user service. So it will create a corresponding user in Smile. So what happens, and bear with me if this is a bit technical. So what happens is when you create a user in your own application, you can also create a corresponding user in Smile and kind of link them together. And that user will be given a unique access token. So something that looks like this. So this is again for security, so that the accounts that we will link for this user we're making sure it's specific to this user. So he's given a unique token to make sure that this is unique for that user. And this token has a set expiry date and time. So it's a short-lived token. It will last for just a few less than a few hours. And so this unique token is what you will use then to instantiate the linking process. So the linking process is again that process that we went through when we connected that app, right? So to do this again, what happens is when you So when you ask the user to apply for a loan, and then you ask the user, okay, what is your employer, right? So again, there is a unique user ID now associated with this user, and you ask him to go through the linking process with Smile. It's actually using the unique token for that user, so that that information, that specific information is retrieved for that user. So here, when you go through the linking process, what happens behind the scenes, so again, going to our API example, the link is actually going to first retrieve a set of providers, right? So the providers is basically a list of the different data platforms that are available for linking. So as a developer, you can kind of retrieve this information from the provider's endpoint. So it's a simple GET request. The GET request will give the different attributes for this provider. So the interesting things you can do as a developer, for example, is maybe you don't want to show all the different providers or we provide in Smile, maybe you just want to focus on a subset of providers, you can actually use some of these attributes to filter that list. So for example, you only want to show the delivery platforms. So by passing a parameter to only show the delivery platforms, like for example, saying, I want to retrieve providers that are of subtype, let's say transportation, as you can see here. So we're using one of the attributes here in the API. If you pass that as a parameter, it will only show in your own front end, only those platforms which are for delivery. So that experience is what you can do to kind of control the how the list that is provided during the linking process. But if you want to show everything, then you can leave out that parameter and it will just show all of the different platforms we provide. So as Jerome mentioned, if you're specifically targeting gig workers in the Philippines, chances are they're using one of these fairly popular platforms that we've already covered. Okay. Now what happens is once they go through the login process, right? So let's say we use Upwork this time. Again, we use George's account. So what happens is there's a linking process again. Maybe there, depending on the platform, it triggers that multi-factor authentication, or it sends one-time PIN to the user's mobile phone or email. And then what happens is then it tries to retrieve that data that was linked to that account by the user. Right? So what happens is the API can return certain values like the user ID, the account ID, or the platform, the specific account that's linked to the platform, so that you can now retrieve that information. So to do that, so if I go back to our example using our API testing tool, so once that account has been linked, you can actually retrieve that information. So just by hitting the identities endpoint. So the identity is their profile information that they shared with the employment platform. So this is their the data, for example, that they shared with Upwork, which I just logged into, right? So this was the data. And then you can also get something called transaction data. So transaction data is a list of all their financial transactions in that platform. Right. So things like income that they received, or the fees that were levied by the platform, or their cash withdrawals. So all of that information you can also get using the Smile API. Okay. Now if we go back, all right. So hopefully that illustrates at a very, very high level how the API works. Now, if you want to, if you're interested in doing that integration, going through the integration process yourself, so it's very, very easy. All you need is something called an API key and API secret. So the API key and API secret is the set of credentials which will allow you to kind of connect to the Smile API and go through this demo scenario that I just showed you. So right now, it's very easy. You can just send an email to access@getsmileapi.com, or to any one of us here in the panel. You can send an email to Vince, to myself, and then we'll try to make sure that you get that API key and API secret very quickly. Now, something to remember though about these API key and API secret, they are specific to a particular mode of our API. So so there's essentially two modes that our API has. So there's something called the Sandbox mode, which is really used so you can get started right away, no cost whatsoever. You can learn about the Smile API this way. You can use the test credentials that I showed earlier. You can use George's profile and login information again. You can find it in our documentation portal. We provide other examples. We have a profile called Ryan, who is so George is more of a Grab driver. Ryan in our test test account is more of a freelancer, and then Christina is more of a young employee who's doing gig work on the side. So you can use those test credentials in our. Just go to our developer portal, documentation portal, and you will find those credentials there. Now, if you're ready and willing to go into production, you can contact us again. You can contact me, or you can contact Vince, or you can contact Jerome or Johan or anyone in the call to get access to the production key. So the production key allows you to use live data. So to go to production, you can now ask real end users to link their account and be able to retrieve their information. Just bear in mind that once we go to production, then it becomes a metered service. So we will start monitoring the usage of our API. So again, remember that there's two sets of credentials, one for the sandbox mode for testing, no cost whatsoever to get the sandbox key. So just contact us. Feel free to play around with it. And then once you're ready to production, and then once you're willing to have your usage metered, then come back and ask us for the production keys for the production mode. Okay. So again, going back to our scenario, just so it's clear. So again, in your registration process, you typically create a user in your own app, and then you also correspondingly create a user in the Smile system. That user is issued a unique token. That unique token has a limit to its life for security, but you can always refresh that token. So we have something called the token endpoint to refresh the token again if needed. So that unique token is used to instantiate the linking process, which launches what we call our Wink widget. So this is a JavaScript SDK that you can embed into your web app. You can use it into your mobile app if it has web view. And then we're in the process of also building SDKs for other platforms. So a native version of our SDK is coming soon. So this SDK, that accomplishes several things. One is it asks for the specific permission of the user so that they can link their account, again, in compliance with local data privacy regulations. So absolutely, we're compliant with that. Before you ask, this is a permissioned access. So that means the user gives their explicit consent. The other benefit of this is it also makes it easier for you to link these different platforms. So we kind of make it, we figure out, the different login mechanisms of these different platforms, so you don't have to. And then the other benefit of this widget is as we update our service, as we add more employment platforms, your developers don't have to do anything. It will just appear automatically in the widget. So let's say, next quarter where we plan to add 10 more platforms, it'll just automatically be there. You don't have to do a thing. So you only do the integration once. We constantly update it, and as we expand our coverage, your coverage expands as well. Now, once that account has been linked by the user, let's say it's freelancer in this illustration. So we get their account data. So once there's a linked account, we get their account-related data, as I just showed you. So you can retrieve, for example, their identity information, their name, their contact information, and then also their transaction information. So these are their financial transactions in the app. The income that they receive, their cash withdrawals, any fees that were levied, things like that. So you get the complete picture of the person's identity and their ability to, their income, their ability to repay a loan, for example. So at the moment, this is what is available. We have other account-related data that we plan in the future. The other thing to note is, this is a user, there is a scenario that your user might have several accounts. So it could be that, they have an account in one platform. So let's say Upwork or Freelancer, and then they have an account in another platform. So in this example, it's a local platform called Online Jobs. So even if they have multiple accounts, multiple accounts with multiple employment platforms, so that's no problem. So each one will have a corresponding link to that user. You can have multiple accounts so that you can also get that information. So you can giving you a more complete view of your customer. Okay, so just as to recap what I showed you. So if you go to our documentation, these are the different endpoints available to allow you to get started. So there's the provider's endpoint, which if you hit it, you will get a list of all the providers we support right now, all the gig platforms that we support. And in the future, we will be slowly adding HR and payroll platforms and other income-related platforms like commerce platforms and so on. The user's endpoint, which is the second one here. The users, again, it allows you to create a user and be able to retrieve a token to initiate the linking flow. The tokens endpoint to allow you to refresh that token. Since it expires, you can refresh that token through the tokens endpoint. And then the accounts endpoint. Once a user has successfully linked their accounts, you can interrogate or you can query the accounts endpoint. You can pass a parameter such as their user ID to get the specific account data for that user. Like for example, what accounts they have linked, freelancer, online jobs, or Grab. You can get information that way. Then once you have that account data, again, as I showed you previously, right now we can give you their identity in that platform and transaction information with more on the way, which I'll share more later. So the other thing is, if you're a developer, so all of this information, we make it very, very easy for you to kind of digest, right? So if you, again, so maybe better to show you where it is actually. If you go to, again, docs.getsmileapi.com, you go to developer resources, you can find here, basically 3 things to get you started easily if you're a developer. So number 1 is the API specifications. So the API specifications is in YAML format. It follows Open API Specifications version 3, which is a widely accepted kind of specification. It allows you to kind of, review, essentially how the API was designed and how it's expected to behave. So you can build it into your development workflow. The other is we also provide something called the Postman Collection. So the Postman Collection allows you to kind of easily get all the different resources available from Smile like this. So you don't have to set up your API testing tool manually. So Postman is very, very popular as an API testing tool. So if you go to our GitHub page, which is this one. So our GitHub page has the, 2 main repositories. We go to Smile Open API. You can see here the Postman collection in JSON. You can download that, go to Postman and import that JSON file. And you can easily get all of the different, the collection of resources or endpoints that are available with Smile. So you can start testing it in your favorite testing tool, which is typically Postman right away. And then finally, you have something called the Quick Start code. So the Quick Start is essentially a downloadable resource which allows you to go through that linking process manually in your own machine. So again, going to the Smile API GitHub repository, you can go to Quick Start. This is you can run git clone. You can essentially clone the repository. We give you some sample code to get started. So it's very, very easy. You can so maybe just to kind of show you. Okay, so here, so once you have that sample code running, so let me just put it here. Once you have that sample code running, and once you've downloaded it, you will get instructions on how to kind of run the code, right? So if you go to the instructions, basically it asks you to download the code. You kind of modify a set of just a set of parameters just to get it running. You run something called you should have something called Node, which is, if you're a developer, you probably have it already. So it can run like a very light web server in your own machine. So again, we have the Open API 3 specs you can download. You have that open source code in GitHub. You can download it if you're a developer. And if you just want to test the APIs, you can just use our interactive documentation, or if you want to use Postman, you can download the Postman Collection to test it there. And then just looking at our roadmap, just very quickly. So if you want to be updated, as Jiro mentioned, about with the latest release, so something that you can readily do is you can go to our website. So if you go to just Get Smile API, there is a link here, or a button here, that you can see where you can get the latest product releases. So you're updated about every release we make. You can click here, subscribe for updates, and then just enter your name and email address. So every time we do a product release, we add a new platform, we add some new capability, we automatically update you and email you. And then just very quickly on the roadmap. So we have, again, we've added identities and transactions. We have a lot more planned. So we have things like if they're on the gig platform, their performance ratings, which may be useful for your credit scoring algorithms, the assets they own. And so maybe we plan to add like traditional credit scoring in the future. So all of this will be coming soon. All right, so that's basically our walkthrough of the Smile API, and we have some interesting offers that my colleague Vince can maybe share more about. So Vince, are you there?
Yep. Thanks, Jan. Hey everyone, Vince here, head of sales and customer success, and today I have the pleasure of sharing our Smile Fast Access promo. So what it is for the first 3 organizations to sign up from now until Sunday, December 19, 2021, 11:59 p.m. Manila time. What you'll get is free 4 hours of white glove implementation service from our CPO, Jan, and our CTO, Bond. All you have to do is just bring your developer and or your engineering manager, your product lead, who's in charge of product direction, and or maybe a compliance or ops person. Jan and Bond may even try to put in some free testing services, service hours and consulting if you need to, depending on what type of environment you guys have. If you're primarily dominant in the web space or in the mobile space. And just a quick note, record implementation that we have is 3 hours. So you can say, it could be an easy deployment at some point. And I think if you beat that, there might be something more in store for you. Once you are implemented, you will get free access from the time you are implemented up to 6 weeks, or until you consume your 3,000 free API call credits, whichever comes first, or maybe even more. Maybe we can do both. You'll see that we are very easy to deal with. So how do you avail of the promo? It's very simple. We just use one email, really. It's access@getsmileapi.com. Send us an email with the promo code 1118 in the subject line. It doesn't matter if you have or don't have any body text. Once you do that, you'll receive a response, and you will know exactly how to move forward. Now, alternatively, just like what Jan mentioned earlier, you can simply just send us a message now via Zoom chat. Send us your email address, which becomes a signal for us to know that you are interested to get the promo. And then the rest will just happen. We'll make it happen. So the trick is, the soonest you send the email or that inquiry or that gesture or signal that you want this promo, the soonest you'll get access. the soonest you will get implemented, and the soonest you will experience the value of Smile API. Now, we've seen in the past, especially product people, or tech people, they need to create some type of business case. You will need real data on that, right? Instead of just theoretical data. So this will give you a good chance to gather sensible business data to gather or to make sensible business decision. This is for free. This is your free chance, basically. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much the promo is. Send in your entries. We'll be waiting in the chat. We'll be waiting, we'll be standing by your email, and we'll go from there. Back to you, Jerome.
Thanks a lot, Vince. So I basically made a promise at the beginning of the call that we leave a little bit of time for the Q&A. I saw that all of the questions were in the Q&A section, and all of them were answered. Now I'm summarizing a little bit of them that were asked privately, but that we don't really want to share here in the open with names and associations. But what I can summarize is basically pricing. So pricing is something that we are happy to discuss with you. Come talk to us, talk to me or to Vince, and we'll see specifically what package makes sense for you, where you are in the journey, whether we are more advanced in corporate and established players in banking, or as well as in lending, or whether we have a startup situation where we're very supportive as well. So when it comes to this, just let us know. Also, other questions were around when do we expand into Indonesia? We are already on the way. Yeah, so we already have a couple of platforms that are international that are covering Indonesia, as well as some Indonesian specific platforms that we already have on the way, as well as questions towards Singapore, since we get a lot more traction from Singapore in the last couple of weeks in terms of signups, as well as India. So these are all platforms and countries that are on the list for Q1 in 2022. As Vince just mentioned, we have rewards for the players that are joining us early now. So these packages that you see are valid until the 19th of December. And this basically means you sign up with us and we can do the implementation later on. The implementation, as Vince said, I think the fastest one was even quicker than 3 hours. It depends obviously on your developers, but there's definitely the white glove service from our side, which helps you to get live, to guide your developers through the process of registration. Just grab a cup of coffee, lean back, and we'll do a lot of the heavy lifting, so to say, if there is any. We support you also after the go live, if there are any questions. And also when it comes to implementation, if you are a reseller, so we see more and more resellers also come and join to get access to employment data. If you are a reseller and you have questions on behalf of your clients, we're also very happy to do that. So I would say, Vince, right? So roughly we have a good experience so far also with contacting across platforms and across clients even that want to integrate Smile into their user journey, that we can also do. Now, I think we have almost touched the end of the session. If there are any more questions, I actually also wanted to introduce you to Bond and Johan, but since I saw that all of the questions were already answered in the Q&A chats also by you guys, I think we're fine now. Very happy to see that we have more and more attendants joining from more and more countries as well. See Asia. And happy to have another seminar then in the next year. I wish you all the best, depending on where you are in your journey. Also success for the next few months to come. And then Happy New Year and Christmas for those of you who celebrated. Merry Christmas, and hope to see you guys in 2022. Thank you very much and have a nice afternoon. Bye-bye.